Hey Picture Perfect people, I've got good news. It is officially aeration and seeding season, and while that means that we all at Picture Perfect are crazy busy, I want to talk to you today about everything that you as a homeowner can do to prepare your lawn for aeration and seeding. Aeration and seeding in the fall is probably the most important service that you will do on a year-to-year basis for your lawn, especially in RVA where we're in this weird transition zone that makes it really brutal during the summer for fescue, so we see higher rates of turf loss. And for as important as aeration and seeding is, it's also pretty expensive. It's a higher cost service, especially compared to just a single application of fertilizer. So as a result, when you've got something that your whole success for next year is really banking on, and something that's costing you a pretty significant amount of money, you want to make sure that you get those results. Now, I know you've heard me talk about how the quality of the service obviously is super important, and there are certain questions that you should ask anybody doing your aeration seeding service to make sure that it's going to be good quality. But the things that you as a homeowner are doing to support that service are just as important, and that's twofold. Of course, there's the aftercare where you need to water your seed and give it enough time to do what it needs to do. Obviously, that's going to be valuable, and we'll talk about that again in the next video. But in this one, I want to focus on everything before that aeration and seeding, because that prep work that your lawn requires leading up to aeration and seeding service is really, really important. Now, there are three parts to prepping your lawn for aeration and seeding that you really need to pay attention to. I'm going to get into those in a second, but before I forget, just go ahead and be sure to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on all of the great turf management things that we're talking about. And also, take a second to comment below and let me know how you are doing with your aeration and seeding for this fall. Are you starting to get ready? What kind of prep do you do? Do you even do aeration and seeding? I want to hear from you guys, so be sure to clue me in to what your experience has been like. Now, as I mentioned, there are three main ways that you need to prep your lawn for aeration and seeding. First is mowing. You want to start reducing the height of your mower blades increment by increment so that they're closer to 3 inches by the time of seeding instead of the typical 4 to 4.5. Second is marking. Any underground structures like sprinkler heads or shallowly buried wires or cables that could possibly be damaged by a core aerator need to be marked so that they can be avoided. If you're getting a liquid aeration service, you can mark 2 off the list, and that's a big appeal to that service. And third is watering. A soil system that is rock hard and dry because it hasn't been watered all summer is going to be very difficult to service, both in terms of getting that seed to germinate properly and in terms of any kind of core aeration being done. So you want to start getting the soil a little bit softer, but not too muddy. So let's go into each of those in a little bit more detail, and I'll show you some examples so you can see for yourself what we're expecting for that prep work. For the typical lawn with turf-type tall fescue, we will always and forever recommend mowing it at 4 to 4.5 inches in height. It's called tall fescue because it likes to stand tall. You'll hear me say that so many times across all the videos that we do because it's a really easy concept that a lot of people just forget. However, there's always an exception to the rule. And aeration and seeding time is when that 4 to 4.5 inches is more of an issue than a benefit. You want to start to reduce that mowing height for 2 different reasons. First, if we get the turf closer to about 3 inches in height, it allows for things like seed and lime and even starter fertilizer to fall all the way to the soil surface a little bit more easily. So you get closer seed to soil contact, a little bit better germination. It just makes things a little bit more clean. Second, and much more importantly, once that seed is put down, it is strongly recommended that you do not mow your grass for at least 3 or 4 weeks after that seeding is applied. Mowing too soon can not only disrupt that seed, but anything that's starting to germinate but is still too fragile to stand up to that mower can be seriously damaged, and then you're losing a significant portion of your investment. Now, I know, going for almost a month or more without cutting your grass can make it look like a jungle, and that's usually going to be the case. But if you go ahead and start increment by increment reducing the height of your mowing, then having it start out at around 3 inches and then grow for a month is a lot better than it already being 4 to 4.5 inches and growing for a month. That inch to inch and a half can really make a difference. So having it a little bit lower just gives you some wiggle room so that you don't feel completely smothered out by your lawn within just a few weeks. The important thing to remember is that we suggest doing this in stages. So if you haven't already started, now is when you need to start on a weekly basis, dropping those mower blades 1 notch at a time. If you recall from our video about how to mow your fescue, taking more than 1/3 of the blade off at a time is very stressful to that grass. You don't want to take a lawn from 6 inches tall all the way down to 3 overnight. It's better to go from 6 to 5 to 4 to 3 to really ease it in. Now, I know life happens. You might not be able to stay on top of that schedule to reduce it that gradually. I get it. You might have forgotten, you might be out of town. It happens. In the event that you're not able to incrementally reduce those mower blades and you have to take a large portion of the grass off at once, don't just leave the clumps behind. This is a situation where it is appropriate to bag those clippings so that you don't have any clumps. A, that risks the potential of smothering out the grass, and B, any clumps like that that keep the seed from reaching the soil is part of the problem that we're trying to prevent anyway. Now, this is kind of the most painful and frustrating part that a lot of people just hate. So great news for my liquid aeration clients, you don't have to watch this. It does not involve you. We are not invading your soil surface, so you can spend the next few minutes refreshing your popcorn, making coffee, whatever it is that you're doing while you watch this, hopefully not flushing the toilet. But for my people who are still getting core aeration, which is totally fine, it just involves some more prep work than liquid does, so let's talk about that. Obviously, the whole point of core aeration is to remove plugs of soil from a depth of about 3 or 4 inches into the soil layer. This is really invasive. It's an aggressive, heavy machine that is digging into your soil on almost every part of your property. And as a result, anything within 6 inches of the surface of your soil is at risk for having potential damage done. Let me list for you the most common obstacles so you can get an idea of what we're talking about. The first 2 are directly related to in-ground irrigation systems, and that would be sprinkler heads and valve boxes. Sprinkler heads are most commonly found around the perimeter of your lawn areas, but you can have some in the middle if there are 360 heads or misters. So it's a great idea to turn your system on one zone at a time to have everything pop up so that you can flag right next to it and let it go back down. Valve boxes can be a little bit trickier to find because it's common for the grass to grow over them if they haven't been touched for a while. But if you know where they are, if you're able to find them, put a few flags around those so that we can give them a wide berth. The third and fourth things on the list fall under the classification of lines. So these involve outdoor lighting, underground electric dog fences, shallow or eroded cable lines, power lines, anything that's either been exposed due to erosion or was buried shallowly in the first place needs to be flagged. And the best way to do this is to put a flag on either side of it along the line as it goes every 3 or 4 feet so that it's clear that there's something following a certain path. Now, this is really important for everybody to be on the same page and understand. If an underground obstacle that is within 6 inches of the soil surface is not flagged or marked properly, and flags are the easiest thing, but I've seen clients use pinwheels or like the little cones for soccer that you zigzag between. Anything that is brightly colored and visible from a distance is going to be fine. But the whole point is, if it isn't flagged, we have no way of knowing that it's there. And if we don't know it's there, we cannot be liable or responsible for any damage done. And trust me, it always happens. It's happened on our own personal properties that we ourselves have core aerated, where the satellite cable is 4 feet off from where we thought it was, and we hit that sucker and have no idea. Then that night we go inside, try to turn on the TV, and nothing works. So it happens. It absolutely does. The best way that we can avoid doing any kind of damage is for you to have indicated to us where there might be any kind of issue. Alright, so for my liquid people, welcome back. For my core people, I'm glad you're still here, or I hope you're still here. This last part of prep shouldn't be much of a change for most of my clients if you've been watering correctly through the summer, but I want to put it on here just so that it's on your radar. A huge part of aeration and seeding is for your soil to be nice and soft and damp for that seed to successfully germinate. It makes a huge difference. And while the proper aftercare and proper watering of that seed is what's most important, going into it with a nice, damp, fertile soil to begin with makes a massive difference. Go figure, it makes complete sense. Just have it ready to go as soon as that seed makes a landing. But this is important for core aeration too. If we've got rock hard dry soil that has just been baking all summer, those tines, no matter how much weight and pressure we're putting on them, can only get an inch or two into the ground instead of the 3 or 4 that we have it set for. So if you start watering now, let that water soak in and start to loosen things up. It's going to make a huge difference. It's going to make your service a lot more successful every which way. So just go ahead and get that water turned on if you haven't done so already. The flip side of that is that there is such a thing as too much water. The aerators that we use are very heavy. They are super heavy compared to the spreader sprayers that we are using to apply your fertilizer. So there's a higher risk as a result of potential damage done to the lawn if it's super muddy and super slick. So the best protocol is to have an every other day watering schedule, whatever it takes. We've talked about watering plenty this year because it's been so hot and dry. But the best plan would be to water as you need for the soil to be damp and soft and stable still without overdoing it. So don't make it muddy, don't squish when you walk on the yard. And more importantly, turn it off for a couple of days before the actual date of your aeration seeding service. So we call you a week ahead. That's when you know that you need to check your irrigation system, flag your sprinklers, mow down to that final level, do everything else, and make sure that your watering is keeping the soil system at the right level of hydration. We want it to be firm, but still have some softness to it. Remember that screwdriver test that we did in the watering video. But a couple days before your service, turn the irrigation system off. Don't let it run. We don't want it to be muddy. We don't want the grass to be wet when we come out because we don't want to do any unintentional damage with all of that equipment making multiple passes across the lawn. And that pretty much covers it. It's straightforward, especially if you're having to mark your sprinkler heads and stuff. It can be a little bit of a chore, but it's worth it, obviously, to prevent there from being any damage and to really maximize on the quality of your aeration and seeding service. I'm super excited about this because lawns look amazing after that seed starts to come in. I can't wait for lawns this fall. I can't wait for the winter growth, and I can't wait to see them in the spring. This is where that all starts. So it's all smooth sailing from here. We just have to get through aeration and seeding. I appreciate you guys watching and staying up to date. If you have any questions as a Picture Perfect client about how to prep your yard, any details that you really want to iron out for your specific property, please give somebody a call. Anyone with our team is able to walk you through what we recommend. As I mentioned before, stay posted for the video that we have coming up next. It's going to be all about that proper seeding aftercare and how you can really guarantee that even germination. I look forward to talking to you guys about that, and I hope that you have a picture perfect day.